Hello, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to another episode of Off the Beaten Path, the show that looks at paranormal events both historically and in modern day times. As always, I'm your host, Rev.Hagen, and as always, we would like to welcome our listeners at SCRMradio.com. That's Scream. Radio.com for all your horror and paranormal needs. Scream Radio is the only 7-day a week, 24-hour a day, 365-day a year live streaming horror radio station on the planet. Because our philosophy is Halloween is not a holiday. It's a way of life. Thank you very much. Now, today, we're going to jump down the rabbit hole. Now, we've done this before. We really jumped down the rabbit. We kind of do every week, but we really jumped down it when we were getting into the German Roswell incident. If you haven't seen it, it's on the page. Look it up. It's played both on the radio station and on the YouTube page. You can look that up. Where mediums were actually communicating with dead aliens. All right, on how to back engineer UFOs. The Nazi Station 211, the Nazi Antarctica Station. God, that's really hard for me to say for some reason. So yeah, we kind of went down there a bit, and then our last episode was on black-eyed children, and kind of the correlation between vampires. They've got to be invited in. And Men in Black stories, where people are hounded by these guys that look kind of similar to black-eyed kids, except for they've got some other stuff going on there. So it's not like we haven't been down this rabbit hole before. Today, though, we're going to be looking at kind of the similarities between aliens, the alien agenda that a lot of people think is the alien agenda, and the Luciferian and Illuminati agenda, the parallel paths of these two. For some reason, I was working on another show that's going to be coming out next on giants, right? Giants throughout history. But there was something about listening to this interview with this guy and then watching it on YouTube. This man, William Tompkins, who is convinced about this alien agenda, right? His sincerity, and he was getting emotional when he was talking about it. And before I'm diving right in, but before we get into it too much, I do want to list again, there are a number of different kinds of aliens that people believe in, right? There's the Greys, that is so much a part of our pop culture. Almost anybody who doesn't even know what aliens are know that's what an alien looks like, right? It's the almost heart-shaped face with the big eyes, right? Big black eyes. Little guys wreaking havoc. Very short, like under 4 feet. Bad News Bears guys, right? Then there's the taller Greys, right? They're almost white and seem to be predominantly female. Don't ask me why. That's just what the vibe people get off them, supposedly. Like I said, we're kind of down the rabbit hole, people. All right, hang with me, my brothers and sisters, please, though. Then you got the Nordics, right? These guys that look like human beings. They blonde hair, big old beards. The women are blonde robo babes in tunics. You can't go wrong apparently with the Nordics. And they're actually supposed to be here to help us. There's the insectoids that look a lot like praying mantis, that a lot of people think are the taller Greys. And that the Greys are part of this kind of triangle deal with the insectoids. And then there's another group of people that'll swear by their mother that that's an entirely separate species of alien. And the third one is the one we're going to be talking about. The third one are the reptilians. And more specifically, the Dracos. Because, of course, there's more than one alien species when it comes to the reptilians. Now, it may sound like I'm being condescending here, and I truly don't mean to be. To me, this is no more far-fetched than half the religions in the world, including my own religious path. So I'm not trying to belittle the people that actually believe in this. Some of this stuff I kind of buy myself, if I'm being honest. I'll get into that towards the end of the show here. But again, I'm not trying to belittle anybody for their beliefs in any of these things. Now, I mentioned William Tompkins in that interview, and it's like a 10-minute interview. You can find it on YouTube if that's your flavor. If you're watching it here on YouTube, or if you're listening at SCRMradio, you can access it on YouTube. Like I said, the William Tompkins reptilian agenda video along those lines. Type that in, you'll get it. But what struck me about the interview is the sincerity, not just of the people asking this guy William Tompkins, who's written books on the subject, but their sincerity and their real fear. They truly believe that these reptilians need blood to survive, and not just they don't just kidnap us or abduct us for the betterment or to learn more about us. No, they believe that we are part of an experiment that these draconians have created, right? That much like the Sumerians that believed that the Anunnaki came down and created man as a slave race to mine for gold, and then decided they didn't want to deal with this race, so they created us to deal with the slave race and to kind of be their intermediary. You know what I'm trying to say? The go-between between the two, but apparently didn't dig us too much either. But there's this whole very complicated about some of the Anunnaki liked us, some of us didn't. That's a whole nother show. The people that believe in the draconian conspiracy believe that this reptilian race created mankind as an experiment, and that we're used as slave labor in other colonies throughout the galaxy, right? Now, I'm serious about this. These people, very to their core, believe this. This guy gets emotional when he talks about it, and so does the woman. They believe that there's pedophilia. Ugh. And sacrifice of children that are done specifically by the draconian race. And when they talk about this, they're afraid, and and apparently it's even worse than that. But if we were told everything that these draconians are doing to humanity, we wouldn't believe it, and we wouldn't believe anything about aliens. We'd be like, oh, these guys are so full of it, it's ridiculous. So I believe that their idea is to piecemeal it out so that we will buy what they're saying. Okay, if you can buy this, well, now let's take you to this level. Do you buy this? Okay, well, let's take you to this level now, because this is really what's going on. That's kind of where he's coming from anywhere, William Tompkins. Other people in the UFO community, when it comes to this theory, are not shy about it. They don't pull any punches. And again, since our time is limited here, if you want to know more about this specific thing and how horrific these theories go and how far they go down the rabbit hole, please look it up. I'm just giving you an overview of this, right? They also believe that, well, I'll tell you this. They believe that when we went to the moon, before we went to the moon, right? On the backside of the moon, or some people call it the dark side, but the backside of the moon. Before we even got there, we knew there was a base there because of the satellites that we had circling the moon, right? Supposedly, this was a draconian base, a reptilian base, right? So when Neil Armstrong and the boys landed and got out of their ship, they were, according to these guys, they were surrounded, the crater that they landed in was surrounded by alien ships. Now, there is something to back this up. There are recordings, supposedly, of Neil Armstrong saying, they're everywhere. They're lined up all over the crater. They're huge, right? Now, you can find those recordings both on YouTube and on the internet, and they're audio recordings. And then, supposedly, NASA realized that they were being picked up by ham radio operators, right? And switched frequencies after some of this stuff spilled out. Believe what you want about that. When you hear it, it's very compelling. It really is. Whether you believe it's draconians or not. It is compelling stuff. Again, I digress. And again, I really do know how deep we are down the rabbit hole, especially for people who are just tuning into this stuff. This is nothing, believe me. Once you jump down the paranormal rabbit hole, you just go, wow, that's amazing. That's a real gig, huh? Anywho's, so we're back on the moon. We're back with Neil Armstrong and the boys, right? And they're looking around. And supposedly what they saw was not just these ships, but hundreds, maybe even thousands of reptilians lined up below their ship. Now, supposedly these guys are 9 feet tall. They're what you would expect. They look like reptiles, but more of a alligator or an alligator kind of gig, except for their snout isn't quite as long. But they're pretty terrifying looking things. But here's the catch. They're shapeshifters, right? So they can look like you and me. They've got, according to this guy, if you believe him, according to William Tompkins, and if you just went off of sincerity and emotion, you'd believe him 110%. I am telling you, when you look at this guy talking. Apparently every ruler on the planet is a draconian, is a shapeshifter. Our presidents from Bush Sr. to Obama apparently were draconians, were these shape-shifting guys. Apparently, the teeny hand orange-haired guy, Trump, sorry, and this is not, I'm not making this political, I'm just being silly, so everybody just simmer down now. Apparently he's not, but God help us if that is the savior of humanity. Turns out to be Donald Trump. Anyways, again, I digress, and I don't want to make this political, so stop it. Just stop it. But according to them, that's the case. And what's really interesting, I wish I could remember his name, and I didn't look it up before I went on air here, but there's a guy that is so deep into this when it comes to, he's from Switzerland, but when he looks at the Swiss and he says, he's so passionate and angry and terrified about his government being controlled by these lizard aliens, right? By the draconians. He says, look at their money. And if you look at their money now, there are these weird lizard people all over their currency. Look it up, my brothers and sisters. The Rev's not talking crazy. That's actually a fact, which really is kind of truly bizarre. This currency looks like it's got aliens on it, and they look reptilian. What the ass, man? That's very strange and off the wall. But even not just when it comes to some of the, now, those are the similarities. We'll get into the similarities with the Luciferians in a second when I bring the Luciferians into this. The other thing is, though, when people talk about abductions, and I'm gonna get into the Greys at this point because there does seem to be some bleed over. People talk about the Greys when they're being abducted coming through the walls, and 10, 15 of them, 10, 20, 15, who knows, a bunch of them, and then lifting these abductees through the ceiling. They feel as though they're being floated up into the air, into the craft, and looking down and seeing the earth as they go up into these spaceships with no ship taking them there. They're literally floating in the air. And you could say, and I know you are saying, God, Rev, you are so frickin' out there. But I'm telling you, if it were just one or two of these people saying this, you'd go, yeah, okay. But when 90%, at least 90% of abductees have those kind of stories, or just floating up, being outside as children, and these little, they think are kids, gray, weird-looking kids come up, and they say, hey, let's go play, and they start dancing around, kind of like the old fairy stories, and they float up into these ships and play with the aliens, and then they get really scared because really strange things start happening to them. Absolutely wild, right? So now I'm going to put a pin in the alien gig, all right, for right now, and we're going to start talking about the Luciferians, and then we'll bring them all together, okay? Okay, so we've done a cursory gig of the Luciferians, or of the Luciferians, hello, of the Draconians, right? So now we're going to start looking at the Luciferians. Now, they truly believe, now, I'm not just talking about an abstract view of Lucifer, all right, like the idea of Lucifer. Like, I know some Satanists, right? Shocking, I know. I even met Anton LaVey and had coffee with him a couple of times. The guy who wrote the Satanic Bible and was the high priest of the Church of Satan. Fascinating guy. As far as I'm concerned, he set up the whole thing to get with naked women. But that's just my personal theory, my vibe off the guy. Really interesting guy, though. But some of the Satanists I know believe that Lucifer, the idea is behind the Church of Satan and the Church of Lucifer, not of Set, that's a whole other gig, but is that when any kind of miraculous change has happened with the humanity, it's somebody going against the grain, right? Whether it's art, music, Mozart, Amadeus Mozart going against the grain, creating this spectacular music. Einstein coming out with this wild theory that everybody thought was insane, changed the world. Tesla, right? Another prime example, but it's the guys that cut the grain. They go, no, I think it's actually this way, and everybody else is telling them no, but then it turns out no. Hey, wow, that guy really had something going on. It's that spark of inventiveness and rebelliousness that actually takes humanity further down the road. Now, I'm not saying that every Satanist and Luciferian believes this, okay? This is just my experience with the people that I know and some of the reading that I've done. I am personally not a Satanist or a Luciferian, but I think it's kind of a neat idea. Don't grab the pitchforks and the torches or anything like that. Don't get crazy on me. But they believe in these conspiracies that Lucifer is behind the Illuminati. The Illuminati, illuminated ones, right? Lucifer, the morning star, right? The bringer of light, as it were, in his name, right? Lucifer literally means the bringer of light. The Illuminati are literally the illuminated ones. So they believe that Lucifer controls the Illuminati, and that the Illuminati are actually the ones that are in control of the world, right? And it's this huge world conspiracy that our world leaders and heads of corporations are actually this sinister group that's after the souls of mankind, who believe, though, that they are the bringers of light, right? I guess every villain doesn't really look at themselves as a villain, right? They're always the good guys, right? At least how they see themselves. Yet I digress. So, but this is the thing that gets me again when you listen to interviews of people that believe that these Satanists, that these Luciferians are doing the exact same thing the Draconians are supposedly doing. Horribly raping and killing children, having blood rituals, the whole 9 yards. The only real difference is that one is a race from outer space, and the other is an ethereal race that ethereal guy that came down, because it wasn't just Lucifer that got kicked out of heaven, right? A third of the host of heaven, according to the Christian doctrine, was kicked out with Lucifer for fighting with him for his bid for the throne, right? Not that most people don't already know that, but just for an explanation. So it's not just Louis; it's also his army, right? There's a big thing right now that there's a huge connection with Lucifer and the Vatican. Now, this is not a new theory, but when you look at the new hall that the Pope has built, right, the new Pope, the new congregation hall, it's amazing. The image that they show of this thing, and for viewers on YouTube, I'm going to throw it up here, and for listeners, just look it up if you get the chance. His new hall. When you look from the back forward, they have these two windows right on the side. It comes down, it looks like teeth and a nose, and the Pope sits right in the mouth. Weird. But, I mean, now, is that just somebody imposing their view on that? Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And behind the Pope is this picture of Christ coming out of a nuclear annihilation. That was the artist's interpretation of it. Christ coming out of this apocalyptic view. And he's kind of withered and it kind of looks gnarly. Some people say there's wings on his back. I don't see that. Personally, it just looks to me like whiffs of smoke. I cannot speak today. I'll let you guys decide. If you when you look at it, if you're looking at it here, if you're listening and you're going to go look at it, because I know you will. And the idea is that the pontiff is trying to get everybody into the church. That if you're, they're saying from his speeches now, that if you're not a member of the Catholic Church, you're not a Christian. So he's trying to get all the Christians under one umbrella for his nefarious Luciferian ideas. When you talk to, there's this really wild video that came out of a guy that broke into the, I think it's the Bilderbergs compound, right? That you're not supposed to, nobody's allowed in there when all the heads of state and corporations meet, out there. It totally reminds me of the So I Married an Axe Murderer, the Pentaverate. Anyway, sorry. I digressed there a little bit. But it totally reminds me of the Pentaverate. But it's not. It is a real deal. They really do all meet out there and have for years and years and years. But the idea is that that's where they make the decisions on how to run the world. This guy snuck in for their ceremony, and there's a giant owl out in the middle of nowhere, right? Out in the middle of this grove. And there's a loudspeaker, and on this thing that he smuggled out, they're talking about, on those loudspeaker, worshiping Satan, giving your life over to Satan, or to Lucifer. Not Satan, but specifically Lucifer. Just wild. But the more you get involved in weird esoteric groups, the weirder those weird initiations can be. I'll be honest with you. Some of the stuff that I've gone through and the different esoteric groups that I've been involved with and occult groups that I've been involved with, there's a lot of symbolism that goes on, a lot of symbolic death, and then you're reborn into the order, kind of thing, if you will. But again, I digress a bit. But there's interviews with people that are talking about seeing a spirit come through the wall when they were being indoctrinated into these societies, right? These Luciferian societies, and it talking to them and telling them, no, I'll give you everything you want. All you have to do is worship me, right? Really off the wall. But what struck me is a couple of things. Again, their sincerity, and they get emotional when they talk about this stuff, and they're very sincere. But the idea of something coming through the walls, like the aliens, like the Greys, right, for abductions. The only difference is, in some abductions, and not all, I would say less than 50% of the abductions happen when somebody's asleep, right? And they wake up and then they find themselves surrounded by aliens, or they remember this in hypnosis or whatever. And then they float through the ceiling. The other 50% or more of abductions happen when the people are awake, right? So either there's a worldwide mental illness that has taken over, worldwide hysteria and mental illness about aliens taking people, because this is a worldwide phenomenon, from the most primitive people on Earth today to the most sophisticated, and I say that with a grain of salt, sophisticated. Let me just say something about that real quick. We have all this amazing technology now that we didn't have before, right? My cell phone, my Apple, my iPhone, has more computing power in it than the computers that took the guys to the moon, right? When I was in the Army, and I got out in 2004, we were stoked because we found a 1 gig hard drive storage, right? An outside hard drive. A gig, we will never use all that. My phone has, God, I don't know, 50 gigs on it. My computer has 300 gigs 300 gigs of information. It's insanity. But has it made our lives any better? Yeah, we can access any information we want to on the net. This show, weird paranormal stuff, right? Down to how quantum foam works, and theories about that. But has it made our life better? I mean, it was supposed to, but it made it easier. But it's also made us, I think, a little fatter and a little off course. But again, that's just me. So when you look at the ideas of both the draconian and the Luciferian ideas of world domination, they're very, very similar. The only real difference that I see is that in the Luciferian ones, it seems you need to make the choice to join, right? You need to say, okay, I now want to do this. I want to be a part of Lucifer's army, whatever the case may be. With the Draconians, you don't have a choice. You're already a part of the experiment, whether you know it or not. Both of these groups are rabid in their beliefs, and what I mean by that is that they are zealots. They believe this to the core, almost to the point of hysteria. I've argued with some of the people, and I didn't mean it to be an argument, but when I questioned some of the people that believe, especially in the draconian stuff, they have lost their frickin' minds about it. Because to them, this is so real. This is very, very real. And don't you understand? You know, these are our children we're talking about. And when you throw kids into the mix, it's a big deal. If you look at, in the early 90s, there was this weird hysteria that started to come out about children being taken supposedly to their daycare, but with these vans, you know, there are daycares that come and pick your children up for you, and then they take them to daycare, and then they drop them off when you come home, right? Well, in the 90s, there was this big thing about them being, these kids remembering that they were taken to these ritualistic meetings where they saw babies being killed and they were indoctrinated into Satanism. I know it sounds really off the wall, but it was huge at the time. Let me tell you. My mother, who worked in the mental health field, was terrified by it and was talking about it. So the FBI did this whole study on it and came up with no credible case or instance where that was the case. Well, of course, the people that believe in the Luciferian idea is saying, well, no, the FBI was in on it. There's a really good book called The Allure of the Sinister that looks at Satanism throughout the ages and tries to pinpoint actual cases of Satanists trying to dominate the earth. I'm not going to give away the book. You really should look it up. It's fantastic. But really, really interesting stuff. When you get into people's core fears and children, it hits every button with me. If I really believed that people were abducting and raping children, my God, I'd be the first one out with a pitchfork and a torch, man. Yeah, string them up. Bullets are cheap. That's my theory on it. Thank you very much. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Now, I do want to say too, I have been down a couple of weeks. I have an autoimmune gig that kind of kicks my butt every once in a while. So it's been almost 2.5 weeks since I've thrown a video out there, and I apologize, you guys. Sometimes it just kicks my butt, and sometimes it doesn't. But this time it did. So I haven't been able to be on here very much. But the videos are going to keep coming. Our show's going to keep going. I love doing this. I love bringing you this stuff. What's funny is, since I've been doing this for so long and looking at this stuff for so long, and the people that I associate with, for the most part, pretty much believe the same things I do. For the most part. I mean, believe me, I've got people on every side of the spectrum politically. Far left, radical right, militia guys that are preppers, to communists living in Oakland, really. People that I've grown up with, people that I've met along the travels, literally across the spectrum. Saints and sinners, for sure. And I forget that not everybody knows about this stuff or has heard these theories. Or like when I found out about the Tunguska blast of 1908, I thought everybody knew about that, that Siberia, parts of Siberia were flattened, or the UFO phenomenon, or Roswell, or ghosts, or demons, or whatever the case may be. I always assume, well, everybody knows about that. Well, apparently they don't. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to enlighten you and to make your life a better place. I really hope you dug the show. Really enjoyed doing it for you. As always, I want to thank again our listeners at SCRMradio.com. That's Scream SCRMradio.com. Please like and comment down below and subscribe, and please spread the word about our show. I really dig it, and try to get as many people as you can to listen to Scream Radio. A lot of really cool stuff going on there. And as always, my brothers and sisters, you keep those heads up. Have a great day.